and thank you for joining me again. Today's video is a little bit longer, and so I'm going to try to keep this intro super concise. This last month, I went and spent some time up at Sagebrush Soul Studios with my dad, whose channel I will leave a link to, and I designed and handmade some leather bracelets for my dear friends as gifts. I hesitate to call this a tutorial because this is my first time seriously seeing a leather project through all the way to the end, but I explored a lot of different tools and techniques because I wanted each one to be really custom and personal to each of my friends. I am really excited to show you guys the whole making process from design to assembly for these beautiful custom leather bracelets. The design process for each bracelet starts by transferring the cardstock template onto tracing paper and then sketching out the design that I want to tool. For the first bracelet, my goal was to make a convincing dragon scale effect. It took some trial and error to get the spacing right, but I made a diamond-shaped grid to get the structure down, and then I started from the bottom and rounded out the top of each diamond to get the layered scale effect. For the second bracelet, I wanted to go with a rustic, hippie sort of vibe, so I just sketched some simple mushrooms. Keeping in mind that I had to carve all of these lines out, I tried to avoid any really tight curves or corners. Then I just drew some little decorative spots to add some visual interest to the background. The design transfers easily onto the damp leather with a stylus and light pressure. The clear plastic sheet helps prevent the stylus from tearing up the thin paper. The third bracelet was inspired by traditional Western leatherwork, so I did a floral design and then I used a wing divider to create an even border. Then I repeated this process for all three bracelets. Up next is, in my opinion, the worst part of leatherworking. I used this swivel knife to go over all the lines and carve them out. You're not trying to cut all the way through the leather, you're just delineating the different elements, which will aid in tooling them later on. And let me tell you, those dragon scales were tedious. And again, I am just repeating this process for each bracelet. These leather tools are metal stamps that you hit with a mallet to transfer the different textures onto the leather. I'm starting off with a smooth bevel, and I'm sticking the longer angled side into the groove that we cut, and then this will create a shaded effect. After defining all the scales, I use this pear-shaped guide to add some more detail to the centers. Again, here I kept the mushrooms pretty simple and just gave everything a once-over with that smooth beveler. Since I'm not planning on coloring the flower bracelet, I got a little more adventurous with the tooling. I used crosshatch tools to bevel the edges and fill in the background. Then I defined the flowers with the smooth tools. And to finish up each piece, I used an edge beveler to carve away the corners and punch the holes for the snaps later on. Like I said, I was aiming to make this bracelet look like it was made out of real dragon hide. So I mixed up some acrylic craft paint in a desaturated purple. I did try to do a dark wash in the low spots first, but the paint was opaque enough that I'm not sure if it came through in the end. So I applied a darker and slightly more saturated purple as a shadow color, and you can see that effect here on the bottom half of the bracelet. And remember, dry brushing is more afraid of you than you are of it.
Do it.
Oh, I don't know if that was the move. Oh, I don't know. Nope, I don't like it. I don't like what I'm doing. I'm still doing it, and I don't like it.
But really, the key to dry brushing is just using the smallest whisper of paint and the lightest touch. I went back and forth applying light dry brushes to the highlights and darker washes to the lowlights until I was happy with the values. And then I finished it up with a silver gilding wax to really make those highlights pop. For the mushy bracelet, I used an antiquing gel, which is a thicker type of stain for leather. I wanted the mushrooms to look like they were the natural undyed leather color, so I poured way too much of this light fleshy acrylic and tweaked it until it matched some naked leather. A few coats of this and some gentle shading later, I was happy with the results. And the flower bracelet just gets a rub down with some olive oil, which it is very important that you get it everywhere. The piece will absorb the oil and it will leave it nice and soft with a beautiful natural color. The first step to finishing these bad boys up is burnishing the edges, guest starring the practice bracelet that I made for myself. You take some of this fancy sauce called tokonol, I think, and apply a little bit to the outsides and use this wooden tool called an edge slicker. You stick the leather into one of the grooves, then the friction smooths out the edges and makes them look nice and tidy. The next step is this big bottle of white stuff with the label not facing the camera. I believe it's called Leather Sheen. Anyway, each piece gets a generous layer of this, which will get a nice glowy finish when buffed out with some sheep's wool. The finishing steps kind of wore away the gilding wax, so the dragon hide bracelet and my bracelet each get a fresh coat. I just apply it with my finger and use a really light touch so it's just catching the highest points, which will push the dimension even more. And finally, I just used an anvil and a hammer to set some black snaps into each bracelet. I didn't want to spoil the surprise and ask them for their wrist measurements, so each bracelet gets 2 snaps installed for some adjustability. And now it's time for the final reveal. I am really pleased with how each of these came out. I love how distinct each style is, and it was a really great opportunity to explore a lot of different techniques. Like I said, this black one was my practice bracelet, so not very much of the process made it on camera, but I just tooled the design into it, dyed it black, and used the silver gilding wax to add some dimension. I wish that I had spent more time on the paint with this guy. I could have gotten away with pushing the values to create more dimension, but this desaturated gray purple is such a pretty color, so I'm still really satisfied with the final result. I think that this one might be my favorite. I had applied a sealant to prevent the stain from sticking to the mushrooms, but obviously that didn't work out. But I think I made a nice recovery with the color matching. I am really proud of how this one came out. Up close, you can see that a couple of my lines got a little wonky, but I think that all that texture and that sexy olive oil color really make this one beautiful. Leave a comment and let me know which one you like best. I am so grateful that you guys decided to join me for this project. These creative types of videos are my bread and butter, so I would love to start focusing my channel in this direction more often. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.